All right, so hey, tonight we're doing something slightly different. Tonight we're starting, normally when you come to student ministry, we come here and we have one message, and then the next week we have a different message, and it's just all over the place. But what we're going to start tonight is we're actually going to start a new series, a 3-week series called Mastermind. Change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your life. And so over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look into the man, the legend himself, into the Apostle Paul. And so what we know about the Apostle Paul is this. At the end of his life, if there's ever been anyone that has mastered the battle that goes on inside of our mind, it was that guy. If there's anyone that has done it, is him. But the good news for us is that it wasn't always that way. If we look at a lot of the writings of Paul early on, and it's still really hard to see you guys, there's a lot of haze. Normally I can see you guys well, but if we read a lot of the early writings from Paul, you'll see that he seemed kind of crazy. He wasn't fully there. He was still on a journey to centering his mind, to mastering his mind, his thoughts. And guys, I'm going to be quite honest, that's actually really satisfying. That actually brings me a lot of joy because I don't know if you guys know this, I kind of think a lot of crazy thoughts sometimes. And so that's really encouraging because the thoughts that I currently think right now are not my destination. They're not where I'm going to end up. I can, just like Paul, I can battle because he battled. At one point he even said, the things that I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I end up doing. Who will help me? Who will save me from this body of death? That's the battle he was going through. He was fighting. He was fighting over and over and over again. And over time, he fought. He gained ground. Over time, he won the battle inside his mind. He mastered his thoughts to the point that when he was on house arrest between 2 guards chained to him 24 hours a day, when he was stuck in the deepest, darkest prison, the place they put people that they're going to forget about and let them die there, he mastered his thoughts. He was in a spot that he said, I can still praise you despite of the situation that I'm in. I know that everything is for the glory of you. So we're going to jump right in. 2 Corinthians 10 is where we're going to start out, all right? All right, we're going to have a little more crowd participation, though, okay? Yeah! Woo! Yeah. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war. Say wage war. Wage war. There we go. We do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with, guys, for those of us who are Christians, we have access to supernatural weapons from the kingdom of heaven. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of this world. On the contrary, they have divine power. Say power. See, guys, the Greek word of power is called dunamis. What that is it's where we get the word dynamite from. And so divine power, what that's actually saying is it's an explosive, miraculous power of God. The weapons we fight with have the heavenly, divine power to do what? To demolish strongholds. Guys, what is a stronghold? I know you guys are starting to wind down from school. I know you guys we're not wanting to think about all this other work stuff, but we're going to go into one more Greek word, a stronghold. What is a stronghold?
Fortress.
It is a fortress, kind of. The Greek word for stronghold was akimora. And what that means is a fortified prison. One biblical scholar said that when you are in a stronghold, when you are in an akimora, you are a prisoner in a fortified prison, in a maximum security prison. And what locks us inside there? Well, what locks us inside these prisons, what locks us inside these strongholds are the lies that are told to us. We are locked by the deception of our enemy. So what does our enemy do? Well, he starts shaping our thinking one lie at a time, so that when we start to actually hear these lies and we say that's true about me, then we're believing something that's not true. See, so we're going to go into a few different details. Like, what are some of the lies that he could tell us? Well, he says, you can't trust people. You can't really let them know the real you. God doesn't love you. He's saying God doesn't care about you. God doesn't hear your prayer. You're never going to get over it. You're never going to get over that addiction. Your life is always going to be bad. You're always going to be hurting. Whatever the lies that Satan's been telling us, he continues to lie. He continues to lie. He continues to lie. That's what he does. He lies to us. But what did God say through Paul? So we're going to go jump in verse 5. He says we demolish, we crush, we vanquish, we destroy. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. Guys, anything that's not from God, we crush it. We destroy it. We vanquish it. We totally obliterate it. We crush everything that is not in line with the truth of God. And then what do? Someone say it. We capture every thought, every single thought, and we make it obedient to Christ. Guys, over this series, we're going to get pretty practical. The next 2 weeks, we're going to go into very detailed, very practical ways that we can actually do this. But for tonight, what we're going to learn is we got to capture those thoughts that are not from God, and we have to make them obedient to Christ. But why is that important? This thought that I'm thinking, it's not that bad. It's pretty innocent. Because your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Guys, I need this to sink in, because this is kind of the central point. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Say that to your neighbor. Say it to your neighbor.
Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts.
The life we have right now is a reflection of the thoughts that we're thinking. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Proverbs 23 says, For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Is everyone, I can't see you back there.
They want you to go back.
They want to go back. Go back.
Can we go back a slide? Sorry about that. Your life is always, I'm going to say it probably another 7 times. Perfect. Throughout the message. But your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. There we go. I mean, this is, we got a dialogue. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. For as he thinks, so he becomes, or so he is. Guys, as you think, you become that. So if you're saying to yourself, I can't. Well, you're right, you probably won't. But through the power of Christ, you can. If you're saying to yourself, I'm a victim, I'm always stuck with these circumstances, I'm always a victim of the circumstances from some outside force, well, then you're probably going to become a victim. You're going to stay a victim. But if you look at the power of Christ in your life and you see that he can overcome all things, you will overcome. If you're sitting there dwelling on your problems, focusing on your problems, then your problems are going to overwhelm you. They will completely overwhelm you. But if you are looking for solutions, looking for the work of God, you will find solutions and you will find the hand of God bringing about all good in your life. As in order to fully understand where we are right now, we first have to see where we're starting from. Where are we starting from? So we're going to do something called a thought audit. A thought audit. Say thought audit. That's kind of a big adult word. But we're going to just basically look at the words, at the thoughts that we've been thinking over the past few days, over the past week. And we're going to just see where we fall. Okay, so the first one's this. Do you tend to think more worried thoughts? Or do you tend to think more positive or more peaceful thoughts? Do you tend to think more worried thoughts, more positive, or peaceful thoughts? Keep saying positive. Guys, are you worried about what other people are going to think about you? Are you worried about your future? Are you worried about that test coming up? Are you worried about if that guy or that girl is going to like you back? Are you worried about what college you're going to or about how long I'm going to preach today? Because it's a long one. Now you guys are all worried about that. Is your thoughts focused around worried thoughts? Or you tend to focus more around peaceful thoughts? Do you sleep well at night? Are you prepared for all those tests, all those projects, everything you have to do in your life? Are your relationships with your friends good? More importantly, is your relationship with your parents good?
No.
Guys, these things lead to anxiety. Do you tend to fall more on the worried side or more on the peaceful side? All right, the next one, the next thought audit we're going to go to, thought audit. Do you tend to focus more on the negative or on the positive? More on the negative, more on the positive. So, do you tend to focus more on the negative? Are you more critical of people? Are you saying, can you believe she wore that? Who does she think she is? Look at this guy. Look at the way he's walking in here. Who does he think he is? Do you find fault easily? Do you feel like life is always hard and that it's only going to get harder? Or do you tend to see the more positive in life, believing the best in people, that life is generally good, that you believe in the goodness of God and you see his hand of work in your life? Do you tend to focus more on the negative? Or do you tend to focus more on the positive? The last one is this. Do you tend to focus more on the worldliness things or the more eternal things? Do you walk into some situation and say, well, what am I going to get out of this? Are you worried about what I have, what I want, what I need, I? Or do you say, how can I be a blessing for my King, for my Father who's in heaven? How can I use my life to bring joy to other people? Guys, why is this important? Here we go again. Our life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. What comes into your mind comes out into your life. No matter where you live, no matter what you buy, no matter what you know, no matter what you do, you cannot have a positive life if you have a negative mind. It just can't happen. You cannot have a positive life if you have a negative mind. So my question to you is this. Are you excited about where your thoughts are taking you? Can you truthfully say, I'm excited about where I'm going? Because none of us can see the future, but we can look at where our thoughts are, and we can see that that is a reflection of where we're going to end up. If we tend to think more negative thoughts, well, then down the line, you're probably going to have more of a negative life. Because our life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. The relationships with our friends is a result of the thoughts that we think. The relationships with our family is a result of the thoughts that we think. Your performance at school, the performance on your sports team is a result of the thoughts that you think. The joy in your life or the lack of joy in your life is a result of the thoughts that you think. Guys, today is just the foundation. We got 2 more weeks. Today's just the foundation. Next week and the week after that, we're going very practical. We're going to go over 3 different ways that we can reprogram our mind to God's truth. But today we're just focusing on 2 very simple things. And the first one is this. We need to identify the number 1 stronghold that is holding us back. What is a stronghold? We went over it about a minute ago, but it's the prison locked with lies. It's the lie that our enemy continues to say to us. It's what our enemy is using to keep us from living the life that God has designed for us. Maybe you hear in your self-talk, I'm not good enough. My past is too bad. After all I've done, God could never, ever use me. I can't trust anyone. After what they did to me, I'm not worthy. I'm always going to be behind. I'm not going to be enough. I'm not pretty. I'm not attractive. Guys, let me tell you right now, these are all lies from our enemy. These are all 100% lies from our enemy. 100%. What is the number 1 stronghold? What is the number 1 lie in your life that is holding you back? Guys, why is this important? Why is this important? Well, because every time we think a thought, there's a neurochemical reaction that is literally redesigning our brain. Literally, it redesigns our brain. So if you think a thought you like, whether it's positive or negative, if you think a positive thought, what happens is you get this thing called dopamine. I think some of you guys just woke up. Did he just say dope? Dopamine. See, dopamine feels good. It's a quick hit, a legal buzz, a thrill. What it is you hear some good news in your life and you're like, dopamine. So that crush that you have in your life, they commented on your Instagram. Dopamine. When someone looks at you and says, man, you looking good today. Dopamine. See, dopamine is our brain's way of saying, I like that. Give me that again. Give me that again. And see, guys, the more we think these thoughts, the more we think these same exact thoughts, the more we're creating what scientists call neural pathways. I know we're kind of getting really scientific right now, but it's kind of important too, you know? We're creating neural pathways in our brain. The more we think the same thought, it's like, picture a big open meadow, okay? The more I think the same thought, the more I'm walking in the same exact spot across this pathway. And what happens is, well, over time, that pathway becomes really defined, and you can see exactly where we've walked. Over time, if we walk that pathway enough, that thought becomes default in our life. So think about it this way. So if we're thinking negative thoughts, you wake up in the morning and you say, I'm not pretty. I'm not gonna worry about getting dressed because I'm not pretty anyways. Well, you created this neural pathway that's negative. And you're walking, and the next day you say, yeah, no one thinks I'm pretty. They all affirmed that yesterday. You continue to walk this negative pathway. And that becomes the default thought, and see what goes into your mind comes out into your life. Those thoughts that you say, I'm not pretty, eventually you start even acting that way. And then it just compounds because now you think it even more. And that path becomes default in our life. But what we have to do is when we notice that we're thinking these unhealthy, unproductive thoughts in our life, we have to say, wait, that's not from God. That's not from God. I need to stop and I need to turn around 180 degrees, because this path that we're walking is not from God. It's not God honoring. It's not leading where God wants me to go. So the second that we wake up in the morning and we say, I'm not pretty, we have to say, stop. That's not healthy. That's not productive. That's not God honoring. And you need to turn in the exact opposite direction and say, no, I am pretty. God created me wonderfully and fearfully and wonderfully made. There we go, that's the verse. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I am pretty. I am made in God's image. That's how we make new God-honoring thoughts. Is we have to take the exact opposite lie that the enemy is telling us, and we have to give it. We have to now say the spiritual truth that God is saying about you. Are you guys tracking with me? Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to give you guys another example. Let's say you guys are at school. I know school, most of you guys are starting to get out, but you guys can all relate, right? You guys all know what school's like. So let's say you're at school and, well, it's been a pretty bad day. In the first and second period, you were given a lot of homework. Fourth period, they said, you got a test tomorrow. At lunchtime, your girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you. And then you're mad, so you go and you get in a huge fight with your best friend, and now they're not talking with you. And so the day just continues to spiral down until you come home and you walk in and there's just chaos. And so what you do is you do the natural thing and you just yell, ah, I hate you guys, and you walk to your room and you slam the door. What you did is you just created a neural pathway inside your life. You just created a pathway that said, when there's chaos, when everything is going wrong in my life, I'm going to yell at everyone around me and I'm going to push them out of my life. And the next day, you didn't finish your homework because, well, you had a bad day. You're depressed because your boyfriend or girlfriend just broke up with you, and your parents are trying to force you to do chores so you didn't do good on the test. And so now you're depressed on that day also. So you come home, and before your parents even get the opportunity to say anything, you again yell at them. And you've created this pathway. You say, I hate you. I'm done. I don't want you in my life. You've created this pathway that if you continue down this pathway, it will continue to become a default. When there's chaos in my life, I yell. When there's chaos in my life, I get mad and I push everyone out of my life. And so when we start to see these things developing in our life, well, we got to stop and say, that's not healthy, that's not productive, that is not a God-honoring thought. We have to completely turn it around. So no matter what your day's like, you may have had a great day at school, but the second you get home and you say, I know I'm about to yell at my parents because they're going to tell me to go take the trash out. You stop and you say, take a deep breath. I got to count to 10, or maybe in your case, you got to count to 500, or whatever it takes. And then you stop and say, God, I need you. I'm not good enough on my own. I need your Spirit to come inside me so I can go inside and I can be patient. I can have wisdom to know what to do. I have the courage to not put my pride in front of my family. And then you step in. And what you've done, instead of continuing down that same pathway, you've turned around and said, no, I'm going to create a God-honoring path in my life. See, if we continue to listen to the lies that Satan tells us, the lies of, I'm going to blow it, I'm not good enough, I screw up, nothing ever goes my way, well, it's time to say, we got to stop that. I need to turn around. That's not a productive, that's not a healthy, that's not a God-honoring thought. Stop that right now. Turn around. What do? According to Paul, we capture those thoughts. We capture those thoughts and we make them obedient to Christ. You say, that's not lifting up my spirit. It's time to choose a different path. Say, I believe God is with me. I believe He is blessing me. I believe that His Spirit dwells within me. I believe that He hears my prayers, and I believe that He will never leave me and He will never forsake me. When you start to go down that path, well, now we're starting to live the life that God is designing for us. We're not living into this stronghold. We're not living into these lies that our enemy continues to tell us. Guys, we must live into the God-honoring thoughts. We must continue to develop those God-honoring pathways in our life. So how do we change our lives? Well, we have to change our thinking from the lies of our enemy, and we need to reprogram them to the truth of God. In Romans 12:2, it says this: do not conform to the pattern of this world. I could say it this way: don't conform to their pathways. Don't think like the world does. Don't do like the world does. But instead do what? Be transformed. Be changed. And how were we changed? Someone help me out. By the renewing of our mind. See, science says you need to rewire your brain. You need to do some chemical stuff. You need to do these great self-help things. But God says, no, come to me and I'm going to help you renew your brain. I'm going to give you a new brain. See, over time, if we no longer walk down that pathway and we completely create a new pathway that's God-honoring, what happens to this old one? Well, eventually it starts to grow up again. It eventually, you start to see little sprouts of grass growing until you can't see that there was ever a pathway there to begin with. It becomes harder to go down that path. It becomes much easier to go down the God-honoring path in our life. Guys, the one assignment is this. This is the one thing that we've talked about so far. We need to identify the one stronghold that's holding us back. Identify the one stronghold, just one, guys. Identify it, define it. What is it? I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy. Guys, whatever that lie is, we cannot defeat what we cannot define. We cannot defeat what we cannot define. Guys, give it a name. Say, this lie is from the devil. This lie is from our enemy, and it has me imprisoned in this maximum security prison. I can't get out of it. Please help me. Give it a name. Give it a name. And see, the hard part is that for a lot of us, sometimes we think that we have it all right on the outside, but there's still lies being told to us, and we still hear those lies. We need to identify them. It doesn't matter how good we look on the outside, because we all have these lies getting told to us from our enemy. Give it a name. Give it a name. And then what we're going to do is, well, we're going to attack it. We're going to attack it. So that's the second thing, is this. Name the truth that demolishes that stronghold. What is the truth? See, we're no longer going down that old pathway over there. That old unhealthy pathway, that's a lie. We're no longer going down that one. We are now naming the truth, and that is the path that we're going to follow. That's the path we're going to follow. See, guys, I'm going to tell it to you guys like this. There's a story. Got two close friends in college. We'll give them a name, all right? What name? We'll give them Josh and Weston. Those are good names, all right? So Josh and Weston, they became great friends over a series of pranks. And I'm not going to tell you the nature of these pranks because, well, I'm not going to tell you the nature of them because they're kind of brutal. But what happened is they eventually became great friends. They eventually became friends that would never leave each other. They always had each other's backs, and they knew it. But what happened is they became great friends, and this was during their freshman year of college. They became great friends, and it created this unquenchable thirst to prank other people. And so throughout the next 3 years of college, that's what they did. They went out and they pranked people, either together or even worse, they were extremely brutal pranking each other. And so their senior year, just after a course of 3 years of pranking each other, they had started this really innocent game of, it's like King of the Hill. You guys know, like, whoever's on top is the one who's winning, or whoever holds the prize is the one who's winning. Well, they started playing that game. And this game started out really innocent. They started out where this object would just lie around and they didn't really care about it. But over time, it started to get a little more brutal. See, what they were fighting for was foam nunchucks. Do you guys know, like, what those are? Nunchucks? They were fighting for these, and see, the reason why it became brutal is because one time when Weston had the nunchucks, he decided he was going to use them, and he beat Josh with these foam nunchucks. It doesn't hurt, but, you know, it doesn't feel good. So this game became brutal, and they started fighting over and over against, over these nunchucks. Sorry, I got choked up there. Fighting over these nunchucks. And see, it wasn't completely fair, because after what wasn't fair is Weston, well, he had a master key to the whole entire school, so he can get anywhere he wanted to. But this one morning, Josh had possession of them, and this game became so brutal that they didn't even let them out of their possession. They held on to them at all times. So Josh is in the shower with his nunchucks, just showering along, and he hears something outside, and he's like, what's going on out there? Something's happening. And so he's like, I know that's Josh. Or I know that's Weston. I know that's Weston out there, and he's going to try to steal these nunchucks while I'm getting ready, while I put them down for a couple seconds. And so Josh gets out of the shower and he walks in the room and he's looking around. He's like, where is this guy? Where is he? And he's like, there's nothing out of place. But then he looks over and he's like, my closet door's shut. I never shut my closet door. So he jumps over and he's now holding the closet door, holding it as tight as he can. And all of a sudden you hear Weston jump on the other side and he's trying to push as hard as he can. And Josh is like, I got you trapped. He's now reaching over, keeping the door shut, reaching over, grabs a chair, and he tries to shove this chair underneath the doorknob. You guys know how that locks it, right? He's trying to shove this door underneath there, but he can't quite get it. So all he says is, Weston, I got you trapped. There's a chair underneath the door, you're locked in there, but the chair is actually over there. And Weston goes, oh man, come on, let me out. I need to go to school. I got class soon. I'm hungry. But the thing is Josh was like, no, there's not even a chair blocking the door. All you have to do is turn the doorknob and walk out. So Josh is like, see you, Weston. And he goes off to eat some breakfast, goes to his 3 classes, has a late lunch. And he comes back to his room thinking, well, Weston's going to have destroyed my room because he's mad at me. After he finds out that he's been locked because of a lie. But he walks in there and he says, there's nothing moved. Looks over and the closet door is still shut. And he's like, is he still in there? So he walks over there and he's like, Weston? He's like, dude, let me out, I gotta pee. And Josh is like, the door's never been locked. I couldn't get the chair underneath the door. You were free to go this whole entire time. You were locked by a lie. See, some of us are locked into prison by our lies. And the only key, or the only lock on the door is a lie. Guys, it's time we identify what that lie is and the truth that's going to demolish it. Guys, I want to look over 2 Corinthians 10 again, okay? This is the Apostle Paul. This is the guy who struggled with his mind. This is the guy who fought for his health. This is the guy who struggled with, or who never surrendered to the lies, who pushed for the truth in all aspects. He said, for though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, guys, listen to this. Our weapons today have heavenly power. They have divine power. They have the miraculous, explosive power of God to do what? To demolish the lies of the evil one, to crush strongholds. So we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of Christ, and then we do what? We take captive. Say, take captive. Every thought, and we make it obedient to Christ. Guys, captive in Greek, it literally means to seize or to arrest with a sword or with a spear. It means you take whatever that thing you're trying to arrest, whatever that thing you're trying to capture is, and you've got your sword and you've got it cornered, and if it can't move, because if it moves, well, you're going to attack it. Guys, this is what we have to do with the lies in our life. When there's a lie in our life, we have to capture it. We have to hide it or put it in a corner, and we have to have the sword. You may be asking, well, what is that sword? I want to know what that sword is. I want that sword. Well, Paul goes on in Ephesians 6 to talk about that. He says, well, let's look at the spiritual. We're all part of spiritual warfare in our life, right? And so God didn't leave us. He did not leave us unequipped. He did not leave us without defense. He did not leave us without something we can fight with. He gave us what he calls in Ephesians 6 the armor of God. And the cool thing about that armor of God is this. Only one of them is offensive. Only one of them is something you use to go on offense. The other ones, they're all defensive items. You've got the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the shoes prepared with the gospel of truth, and the helmet of salvation. But the last one is the one we attack with. It's the sword. It's the sword of the Spirit, or the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. So what we are to do is we are to capture those lies. We are to capture them with the sword, which is the Spirit, which is the Word of God, which is God's truth. And we declare that this is not from God, and we must attack it. We must attack it. See, God says, Satan's going to lie to you, but he's going to say, capture it. Capture it. Say, I'm not going down that negative pathway. Say, that does not lead to God's destination. I'm going to choose a different road. See, that old pathway is starting to grow over when we capture those negative thoughts, if we make them obedient to Christ. It's not easy to go down that pathway anymore. Guys, personally for me, the more I travel down God's pathway, the more I believe it. The more I know that He renews my mind, and the more that He changes my thinking. Guys, the more I walk down God's pathway, the God-honoring paths, is the more that I don't walk by sight, but I walk by faith. The more His Spirit directs me. Guys, our life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. Our life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. And we must capture them at sword point. We must. Guys, I'm going to get real transparent here. What's the number one thought that's been holding me captive? What's the number one thing, the number one lie that's been told to me from our enemy since the time that I was a young kid? Well, for me, it's this. I'm the youngest of three boys. I'm the youngest of three boys, and I always grew up in the shadow of my brothers. Right now, I've got one brother who's a pilot in the United States Air Force, and the other brother who, any sport that he touches, he's the best at. He's just at the best at whatever he does in sports. And so, growing up from a young age, I knew that I wasn't as good as them. I told myself, the enemy told me that I'm not good enough, that you have to try harder to be worth something. You're not good enough. You have to try harder to be worth something. You're not good enough. Try harder. You're not good enough. Try harder. You're not good enough. Try harder. That's the lie that I told to myself for years and years and years. And years later, it's matured. Years later, it's matured. It's matured to no matter what I do, I'm going to fail it. If I give it all at church or at work, I'm going to fail at home. And if I give it all at home, I'm going to fail at church. The messages I preach, well, they're never good enough. They don't hit. They don't resound with you guys. I can't meet everyone's expectations. People are going to rely on me, but I'm just going to fail them. I try. Guys, this is the truth. This is the lie that's been in my life. And it's kind of hard because, well, there's some truth to it. There is some truth in this lie because on my own, I'm never enough. On my own, I don't have what it takes. On my own, I'm never good enough. But here's the truth that demolishes that lie. I am never alone. My God is always with me. His Spirit dwells within me. The Spirit that raised Jesus alive is alive, and it's a well inside of me. I've got His Word. I've got the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And it is sharp, and it is powerful. And that's the truth that I have that I can take forward. Anytime that our enemy is saying, you're not good enough, I look at that and I say, 2 Peter 1:3 says this, God's divine power has given us. God's divine power has given me everything I need to live a godly life. The more I walk in this, the clearer His pathway becomes, the easier it is to travel. The more I live in God's truth, the more that becomes the default. See, when Satan says to me, you can't do that, I say, stop right there. That's not a God-honoring path. That's not productive. That's not healthy because I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Guys, I don't know what your stronghold is. Maybe you're saying, I can't get it all done. I can never know. Guys, stop there right now because when you are weak, rely on His strength. You may be saying, I'm not attractive. I'm just no good. No, you are fearfully and you are wonderfully made. You may be saying, I'm miserable. I'm always hurting. No, the joy of the Lord is my strength. Whatever it is, whatever the enemy is saying to you, look to God to renew your mind. Because, guys, you can say it at this point. I hope you can. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. What comes into your mind comes out into your body. Just like Weston, all we have to do is stand up and untwist the door and say that's a lie, and we can walk out. Will you? Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to get extremely practical about how to do what we've been talking about today. But for right now, define it, capture it, and name the truth that's going to demolish it. Choose not to walk down those lies. Choose to walk down the God-honoring pathways. Because Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Let's pray.